Rain Bordo, a book from the author Mateo Balaban, is, well, a mixed collection of poetry, prose and photographs of the author's paintings. Mateo Balaban has written 4 more books, 5 in total. Rain Bordo, author of Chaos, The Road Has No Empathy, Fragments of an Old Empire and Foundation. Rain Bordo is, honestly, the first book I read that was dedicated to depression. And right there on the very first page, the reader is confronted with reading instructions: don't read this book. Why that is, so will become clear through the texts and stories that follow. Most writers are, eager for their books to be read, so we may be surprised by the author's statement right at the beginning. Yet, as contradictory as it may seem, it is in fact an invitation to read. The author is a young man in search of his place under the sun. He is brave enough to scratch beneath the surface, driven by his deep insecurity in this world. Everything amazes and intrigues him, especially interpersonal relationships and his relationship with himself. Infected by various feelings of inferiority, worthlessness, self-denial and self-judgment, as well as judging others, he falls into the trap of many common addictions that tempt young people: smoking, alcohol, drugs, sex, which he addresses openly and honestly. The collection is structured as a sequence of events, rather like a diary format, told through the story of the main character and his romantic and friendship connections. His self-doubt, well, it's expressed in verses like, "I am purposeful and irrelevant, just like a reference interval, and my candle casts no shadow, nor does my sea create foam," from the poem Departure. While reading, we experience the interaction between the author as both the narrator and protagonist and the main character, Peter, through his interactions with a girlfriend, friends and parents. The boundaries blur so masterfully at times that we feel Peter is the author and the author is Peter. These shifts in perspective show that despite perceiving himself as insignificant in this existence, the character is highly skilled in self-examination. He splits himself into a conscious self, a higher awareness, and the mundane, everyday version in which he feels like a hostage, a victim, a loser. Thus, we can't say he's completely unaware of his struggles and aimlessly wandering through negative experiences. On the contrary, his internal radars work well. However, in the absence of discipline, "I'm lazy, I can't be bothered," he slips into a pattern of helplessness, unable to find a good job, abandoned by the girl he deeply loved. The collection has, well, a confessional tone, a book as a confessional. Unable to exchange emotions with the people around him, the poet turns to the only medium that won't resist his urge to share: paper. "I'm so afraid of being rejected that I don't enter into relationships or connections." But that statement doesn't really hold, because whether he likes it or not, he is already in relationships, where he's afraid to reveal his true self, his inner world. Due to past experiences, he seeks substitute behaviors that won't turn him into an outsider, since, all of us seek to be accepted. Everything he feels and wants to share, he keeps to himself, developing internal monologues that give the illusion of complete disconnection. A father-son relationship is essential for a man's groundedness in life. The poet speaks of this in the poem, "But where is my dad now?" This isn't a question of physical presence. The father is there, but he is emotionally absent. In each poem or story, it's clear that the author is not just describing his own experiences, but projecting them as universal, giving them broader relevance. Many generations were raised to be emotionally closed off, to not speak or show feelings publicly, traits often unknowingly passed to the next. There are many questions: why is it so, and how have circumstances shaped people? In seeking solutions for himself, the author also tries to justify others, hoping that forgiveness will ease life for all involved. Younger generations are crying out for openness. They sense deep down that nothing good comes from hiding, not for themselves, not for others. Yet no one wants to be the first to speak. The wounds are too deep, so the wall of silence builds. And that wall is a heavy burden, nearly impossible to carry, even harder to break. You can't go around it or leap over it. And thus, we get two people, father and son, suffering. That suffering, it trickles into all other family relationships. My personality is an interesting house of cards. It has no foundation, stress shakes it. I didn't end up in trouble on purpose. Through conversations between Peter and Luma, his girlfriend, Peter tries to justify his behavior. I've realized that every thought and feeling is under my own jurisdiction. The escape lies in protected, happy thoughts and in music. He attempts to draw his psychological self-portrait with words as he paints his feelings on canvas. I know what I don't want, but I don't know what I do want. This indecision leads him to paranoia, psychiatry, alcohol, marijuana, and well more. When I get drunk, I just hug and kiss everyone around me. This shows his non-violent, deeply emotional nature, a man overwhelmed by the injustice of the world. You love with all your heart, and still you mess up. He rationalizes masturbation as a form of self-help for failed love relationships. A person feels good when masturbating. In this context, it means that people seek relationships that make them feel good, implying that the other person is the source of satisfaction. But the truth is that one must find fulfillment within. That is the starting point. As long as we depend on others for happiness, we remain enslaved, addicted, dependent, and without personal power or integrity. I feel like damaged goods, torn between what I want in life and what I don't. A classic example of a mediocre soul aiming high. Do I want to be average or not? Through personal issues, the author touches on social norms that define an individual's framework. Luma comes from a real family. To me, a real family is one with ducks, pigs, geese and sheep. I'm not sure, but I don't think I'm good enough for her. I've always been bad at finishing things. Lately, I've taken a liking to drinking. I was good at procrastinating and avoiding responsibility for anything. If I keep writing poems this bad, this book will be used as kindling. I call this part of life I don't know. Lately, I've been overcome with disgust and self-loathing. When I was younger, I questioned God's existence and read somewhere that we invented politics and religion to stop killing each other. I love curvy women with pear-shaped bodies. We said we'd wait until marriage. Another nonsense of modern churchgoers. We didn't wait. What we see here is an interesting young artist who bravely dove into himself and just as bravely exposed his experience to the public. The process of self-examination, who am I, what am I, is, well, painful. But revealing that vulnerability to the world is even more so. Ready for any reaction? He walks that path again, hoping that his experiment with himself might help someone else. What is life really about? A few memorable moments and then working yourself to death from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m.? The thing is to accept yourself as you are. That's my problem, Long-term rejection of myself leads to memory loss. It's, well, a striking observation. Since I constantly reject myself, I have no reason to remember anything about myself. That recommendation at the beginning, don't read this book, now feels like a call, feel what I've been through. And don't repeat my mistakes. Feel all the misery of the fall and the joy of rising. Be me briefly and don't judge my honesty. If you can, save yourself from some vices. Too bad I can't be open with Luma and tell her how I feel. Because I fear unrequited love, the first real problem of our time. This book can also be considered a form of psychological self-help. A person feels excluded, rejected, until they reach the realization that the root of that rejection is inside themselves. As long as they reject and fail to accept themselves, they can't expect acceptance from others. That's the mechanism of life, really. Others are mostly focused on themselves. In us or others, they seek what they themselves are missing. And when we direct their attention to our feelings of lack, they simply mirror them. I'm no longer what completes you. That's from the poem Doll. And well, Gambler number 5. I really like this painting. That's why healing is so important, you know. The author, well, he finds it through writing. I love writing letters. They hold secrets. No one longs for anything anymore, those long midnight conversations. Don't take me the wrong way, life. When I'm not bitter or indifferent, I'm rather sweet. But life isn't just romance, is it? We can philosophize about love all we want, but on the 15th of the month, the electricity bill has to be paid. Peter's girlfriend, Luma, plays a dual role, both as his partner and a future psychologist. As such, she reacts from two different positions, one as a professional neutral observer, the other directly involved in events. These roles intertwine naturally. Love conquers is the book's motto. But when that same girlfriend becomes pregnant with someone else, Peter once again falls into doubt, questioning whether anything in the world is truly safe or stable. And that sense of stability is vitally important to him. He is aware of the answers, at least intellectually, but the strength to act is not yet fully there. He's disturbed by a society that has rejected true values and turned to what is shallow, disposable, fast and consumerist. The poems and stories are interwoven, prose and verse. He doesn't like conventions or imposed literary rules. He explores life, and he treats words the same way. He follows emotion and reason, often in opposition. Luma, listen, I've noticed that from childhood we are taught that controversy is the only truth. You wonder, why is that? Let me explain. We are all trapped protagonists in our own comedy. No one teaches you how to be peaceful or how to love yourself and build a whole self that accepts itself. The thing is, from a young age, we're taught that peace and calm don't sell because they're boring. I'm sorry that love, just like Christmas, has become commercialized. His writing style reflects his personality and state of mind in the moment. He doesn't pander to established poetic or literary giants. He uses the language that suits him, including street language, conversational tone, and, well, even profanity. He is also a painter of colour. Colour is his emotional outlet. His painting supports his writing, and his writing enhances his painting. He's captivated by colour. He tries to bring colour into his life, to avoid monotony, greyness, dullness. His paintings aren't landscapes, still lifes or portraits. They're, well, seemingly random splashes, drips and layers of colour, representing the chaos he feels inside. Their meaning and message come from the viewer, you know. Each person experiences colour differently. Some paintings are meticulously composed. Colours are lined side by side. Elsewhere they spill, bleed and blend chaotically depending on his mood. They invite the viewer to pour their emotion into them. One colour stands out, burgundy or Bordeaux, the name of the collection. It's the colour of a stranger's or perhaps a known girl's dress. Hence the Bordeaux rain when he's sad. In contrast to the texts and poems that follow his psyche through depression, the paintings are, well, bright, cheerful and tender in tone. That expresses his softer, feminine side, just as present as the masculine, problem-solving, controlled side. Maybe all of us men, at some point, dilute into floppy members of ridiculous slime, conventions, disaster. I never liked social norms, I just didn't. I liked being myself, always. The colours defy rules. They aren't placed to stay where they're placed. On the contrary, flow and change are their goals. Like a river's course, like life. You can turn them around and always get a new perspective. They are not framed or defined by perspective. You never know where a change of view will take you. Despite all the turmoil the young author reveals, honestly and without filters, inflicting the greatest pain on himself, he still shows remarkable awareness of the world around him. But his mature, conscious mind doesn't prevent the emotional part of him from, wandering through his insecurities. In doing so, he strengthens both sides, his faith in himself as a human and creator, and his creative expression. He allows himself growth through failure. He allows himself to be creative in an uncreative society, regardless of what traditional critics might say. He's building his place in the sun by himself, not relying on anyone. A valuable book. Essential reading for young people going through similar states, but also for adults to remember their own, if they've managed to suppress or forget them with time. And let us finish with a few more valuable quotes. I'm afraid to feel good because it won't last. Poems are like sneakers. Not all of them can be pretty. Love given for the wrong reasons turns into destruction. She didn't allow herself to be loved because she was always left behind. I guess I'm just a stopover for girls learning how to walk. She loved silence, but my silence was too loud for her. In the end, everyone accepts destruction as a form of defense against a painful reality. And every time they say, "It's not my fault," misapplied love gave birth to selfishness. Be careful whose dreams you're fulfilling.